Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I feel bad that each of you have had to buy a ticket to come to this roast. Because every morning at Bearskin Airlines, we roast him for free. And the best part about our roasts, he's not there. And Cliff, before I get started, I want to personally thank you. I'm deeply indebted to you for allowing me the opportunity to add to my personal resume the word roaster. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a man who has an opinion on every subject. But when you try to pin him to the details, we find he actually knows very little at all. You take, for example, his favorite pastime, golf. Ask him how he slices a golf ball to the left, hooks one to the right. He hasn't got a clue. And now he believes he can give golf lessons. Which is par for the course for Cliff Friesen, because the higher his handicap gets, the more qualified he deems himself to be an instructor. He is especially knowledgeable on how to properly, and the key word is properly, how to properly line up your fourth putt. And you want to make sure that there's no one behind you, because that'll take about 5 minutes to do. This is a man who has reputedly many fine friends. We're still waiting for them all to show up. So Cliff coerced a bunch of people to partake in this event, including me. Told them that they would have a superb evening, a great dinner, and a lot of laughs. And for those he could not intimidate, he bought them tickets anyway. Would you believe a bunch of bogus good wishes and compliments and set of birthday cards that must have been designed by the creatively and artistically challenged, and inside verses of dubious taste that is intended to somehow make Cliff Friesen feel extra special? This is a day that Cliff needs to mark his 60th birthday, much like a dog defining his path of existence. Why that should be a reason for a celebration is a bloody mystery to me. Still, out of generous curiosity, we all thought we might show up and see Cliff Friesen visibly age in front of our eyes. How exciting is that, I ask you? Just about as exciting as watching one of those white hairs fall out. Birthdays are a wonderful test of our balance between our discretion and our honesty. We are honor-bound to show up to this event, and discretion demands that we lie. Yes, I wanted to come. And yes, I wanted to be here, especially up here. So when I asked myself, what the hell did I do to deserve this? Surely I think no one could be this unlucky. Cliff Friesen of late, and because of this event and my involvement, is like the proverbial sticky gum. He has fastened himself to my shoes, and the more I try to wipe him off, the more he sticks to me. Like grass in the cleats of your golf shoes. And I only hope that when this evening is all over, there's a refund check in the mail with interest. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I am here under duress. I am the only one from Bearskin Airlines here to roast the boss. Do you think anyone in their right mind would want to be up here and roast the executive vice president? Not in your life. Do you believe anybody from our management group would want to be up here and roast his boss? This is not a win-win situation. Do you think anybody from our union groups would want to be up here and roast Cliff Friesen? Oh yeah. Every last one of them. But they wanted more time, more free tickets, and a 3-year contract to continue their verbal barrage. Although working for Cliff has many fringe benefits. Trust me when I say to you, this isn't one of them. At least that's what I was promised. And I certainly don't recall many benefits. Right up here. And even now, his fringe is receding. When it comes to Cliff, I can't stop thinking of the Rodney Dangerfield line and the Tina Turner song, "All I Want Is a Little Respect." But how do you respect a boss that spends more than half of his time on a golf course? For him, that's work. And continually shoots in the 90s, the high 90s. And the very next morning, he has the audacity to come into the office, convey that perfect tee shot, that awesome chip to the green, and that breathtaking downhill slider that edges the hole and finally drops. And I simply ask, Cliff, what about those other 96 shots? Yeah, but Steve, I got a birdie. And recently asked at a senior management meeting, Cliff, how many planes should we buy? He blurted, I'll take a double bogey, and Harvey ended up buying 6. And when questioned by a colleague, Cliff, what's the secret of your success? He confidently responds, always making the right decisions. Well, how do you know how to make all those right decisions? Experience, he says. But how do you gain all of that experience? He utters, by repeatedly making the wrong decisions. Cliff prefers to surround himself and needs people who are responsible. Because anytime anything goes wrong, they're responsible. And he's the boss you can't overlook. And because of his position, he does stick out slightly and makes the rest of us look vaguely handsome with a pleasing physique. And I will never understand why his managerial meetings, called to think outside the box, are always held in small, crowded, windowless boardrooms. And then for lunch, finally, he orders in. Tournament Center hamburgers. Because of his self-importance in the company, he deems he deems it. That's what he tells me. I'm important. he deems it necessary to continuously stay in touch. As usual, his cell phone is always attached to him. One of the most disturbing experiences I've ever had was when Cliff and I were walking down the beach, and this was in Myrtle Beach, and we're on a golf trip, and his cell phone started to sing, "O Canada." The disturbance wasn't this singing phone. It was where the phone was being retrieved from his Speedo. His Speedo, Cliff Friesen's. I don't think that's funny. His Speedo, Cliff Friesen's adaptation of the thong, over the years has slightly shrunk, while Cliff has matured in bulk. Completing his call, he apologized for the interruption. And as he gently returned his phone to its concealed location, it appeared that the best part of Cliff's anatomy was still standing at attention to our national anthem. I said to him, "Who called you?" Yeah, of course, thinking it was Susan, he says it was my investment broker. I said, "What the hell did he say?" He said, "My stock went up." I said, "No shit." It's going to be interesting to see what he does next summer. Thanks to T-Baytel, he just bought a big BlackBerry. He's the only boss that I know of with a unique filing system. Everything is on his desk. Financial reports, investment tips, last year's Christmas liquor. The bottles are empty. Golf balls, clothes, and more notably of late, books of encouragement on how to improve my golf game. And ladies and gentlemen, he needs encouragement. Because as Jim Jameson, Professional Golf Association instructor, Cliff's instructor, once whispered, Cliff has a loft problem, L-O-F-T, loft problem, a lack of frigging talent. Currently, Cliff is reading a couple of books on how to improve my game. For you golfers in the audience, you may want to take note. You may want to take note of the authors. First book, How to Hit a Titleist from the Rough When You've Hit a Callaway from the Tee. Written by the well-known, the well-respected Don Kehoe. And because Cliff lost quite a bit of money last May when we were down in Myrtle Beach, he's reading this book, How to Pester Your Opponent into Unconsciousness and Win His Money. There's only one, written by the well-known, the acclaimed Clint Harris. With Cliff Friesen, what you see is what you get, which is really a shame. Because we are led to believe that looks don't matter. And indeed, to Cliff, it's plain to see that they don't. Susan dressed him tonight.
I dress him every day.
Not every day. But Cliff is not a slave to fashion. One of my most vivid memories was evidenced a few years back when he appeared at Country Jam, a 3-day country music festival. Picture this: donning cargo shorts, snakeskin cowboy boots, and an Hawaiian floral shirt. Innovatively accessorized by a Willie Nelson cowboy hat with the insidious false pigtail attached. I actually cropped that picture, I tell you, he's a sick man. He did not adhere to the age-appropriate restrictions until Country Jam became a Halloween party. As most of you have probably noticed, polyester golf shirts, complete with company logo, was the apparel for this past summer, this past fall. However, 12 golf shirts of the same color and the same bear paw does not present a new, clean, and fresh look every day. One may have thought, and many did, and still do, that this man only has one shirt to be worn over and over and over again. Hope you're getting this message. And this, to the unknown, speculated a serious hygiene problem. And now the truth is known of his 12 golf shirts. The unknown fact is he only has one pair of matching shorts. Cliff Friesen is the perfect billboard for a healthy life. One look at him and you can really see the extent of damage caused by his numerous vices. Be that as it may, he has joined the gym. The athletic club does provide Cliff and other middle-aged the opportunity to partake in the urban myth that spending your time talking at the gym is really an excellent workout. Although skinny legs and a tight ass does not count if the abdomen is in the rotund category. The well-rounded man that he is, in mind and in body, and especially in body. Cliff's yearning for character and contour has taken him beyond the gym to the halls of Pilates, yoga, and reformer classes once a week. They offer a variety of integrative healthcare services and exercise classes to increase vitality, whatever the hell that means, enhance your spirit, and get you into motion in a spacious environment. A few well-rounded characters like Cliff, they need a spacious environment, especially if they're all going to be in motion. And personally, following his classes every Wednesday morning, I'm tired of him coming into the office, lying on the bearskin kitchen floor, saying, "Steve, watch me stretch, watch me stretch, watch me stretch. Steve, help me up, help me up. Steve, get back here, help me up." One day I left him there for 2 hours. His quest for enhanced body flexibility is for the sole purpose of being able to swing the golf club around that body for high-speed downward motion. And for the past numerous years, Cliff has been purchasing every performance-enhancing golfing aid known to man to improve his game. All Cliff wants is length, straighter tee shot, and greater trajectory. And as he addresses the golf ball, he stands tall, erect, and stiff with controlled gyrations. All of this so he can score better. Cliff, I have the perfect solution. Buy the bloody blue pill. Viagra will give you all of this and more. Length, stiffness, stamina, higher launch, trajectory, and increased performance. And better still, buy the 100 meg dosage, and you'll be scoring all weekend long. No tee times necessary. Play right through. But remember, Cliff, that little blue pill is just one of many options that you and your golf instructor should consider for treating CDS. And that's Cliff's dysfunctional swing. I know that many of you have had the opportunity to play golf with Cliff. I also know it's a dastardly deed. But that's your choice, and at least you have a choice. Cliff thinks it's a treat for me to play golf with him. I get to watch him. Oh yes, I get lessons. He drives the golf cart. My ball's over in the center of the fairway. I've never walked so much and been driven so far in my entire life. And the last time we played, and because he couldn't find his ball, he's snarling. It's the worst golf course I've ever played on. I said, Cliff, this isn't the golf course, this is the bush, and maybe you want to swing an axe instead. There was one day he hit his ball so far in the bush, he got lost. And ladies and gentlemen, he has spent so much time in the bush, he can now tell you which plants are edible. Now seriously, folks, Cliff is most passionate about his game of golf. He yearns to be the consummate golfer. He hovers around the tee box trying to impress with his bag of novelties and his swinging devices that no longer work. However, Cliff, we do salute your narrow-minded vision, your optimism, and above all, your senseless courage to succeed at this game of golf. Without a doubt, you keep a bold expression, and we do acknowledge the valor you have shown in the face of adversity. However, even you should appreciate the futility of your actions. It really is an awe-inspiring example. And as of today, an old fool refusing to accept the fact that he has very little to offer, other than to serve as a warning to others what not to do. The boys told me to say that. Ladies and gentlemen, and Cliff, in closing, I would just like to say, birthdays are normally a cause for hilarity and celebration. At least then we get to laugh. There is a time for compliments and paying tribute to a much-loved friend. But Don Keogh's birthday's not till March.
Thank you, former Communication Director Steve Benoit.
Sit down, Jim. I want a police officer between me and my brother when I do this.
I'll try and find you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Harvey. I'm the other brother, the younger and the better looking one, of course. Well, you know, very often when we were going out on meetings together, we'd go check in at the same motel, and we'd be standing in front of the counter, and the clerk invariably said, "Oh, Father and son, eh? Cliff, when I gathered the family to discuss your roast, we all tried to think of something that would sum up what a marvelous son and brother you are. We really did, and nothing came to mind. We tried to find someone who would like to pay tribute with sincerity and honesty in a meaningful way. No one came forward. Then I drew the short straw. I asked for charming stories that I could tell polite company. There were none. Even your mother had nothing to say. While your aunts and uncles discreetly walked away, embarrassing silences from our friends back home greeted our pleas for compassion and forgiveness. Cliff, if only you hadn't upset so many of us over the years. Cliff was about 8 or 9 when he wanted to try horseback riding, even though he had no lessons or prior experience. So one day he mounts a horse unassisted, and it immediately springs into motion. It gallops along at a steady pace, but Cliff begins to slip from the saddle. In terror, he grabs the horse's mane, but cannot seem to get a firm grip. He tries to throw his arm around the horse's neck, but he slides down the side of the horse. The horse gallops along, seemingly ignorant of what is happening to Cliff. Finally, giving up his feeble grip, Cliff attempts to leap away from the horse and throw himself to safety. Unfortunately, his foot becomes entangled in the stirrup, and now is at the mercy of the horse's pounding hooves as his head keeps hitting the ground over and over. He actually starts to lose consciousness, but to his good fortune, Bobby, the Woolworth greeter, saw the dilemma, ran over to Cliff and unplugged the horse. When Cliff and I were young, I stayed at home to do the chores. Cliff went to the city to do the town. When we finished high school, I went to work and earn a living. Cliff went to play baseball. Nevertheless, Cliff started honing his skills as a businessman at a very young age, specifically in negotiation and finance. When he needed his car cleaned before a hot date, he negotiated with his sisters to clean his car and told them he would pay them a whopping 25 cents each. When it came to time to pay them, the young economist that he was, he told his sisters, "I'll pay you later, and as long as I owe you money, you'll never be broke." And that was 42 years ago. Without a doubt, Cliff, it's time my sisters collected. Although still in his teens, Cliff had signs of being a shrewd entrepreneur. It appeared that at a young age he knew how to make a buck. Road conditions in Saskatoon on cold winter mornings were always icy. Every Saturday morning, Cliff and his brother-in-law went looking for vehicles that slid off the road and into the ditch. One particular occasion, where a driver had slid off the road, the gentleman asked Cliff, "How much do you charge to pull me out of the ditch?" Cliff advised, "We charge by the foot." "What do you mean you charge by the foot?" he says. "We only charge about $1 a foot, and it depends on how much rope we need to pull you out." "Well, how much rope do you need?" this gentleman asks. "Well," Cliff says, "that doesn't really matter today because we only brought the long rope." When I matured into the business world, Cliff was sliding into second base. As a baseball player, Cliff was an excellent catcher, catching loose women and catching hell from the teacher. But his need for cash for entertaining purposes took Cliff in many directions, seeking new employment. One day, he thought he might like to be a bronc buster. That's a cowboy who breaks horses. Friends of ours had a horse, an unruly one that needed breaking. Cliff took the horse for a run, and within 100 yards, the horse took a hard left, stopped abruptly, and Cliff flew over his head into the ditch. Well, that was Cliff's first flying experience, and this is the reason why Cliff's flying the desk at Bearskin Yards. As some of you may know, Cliff and I were avid curlers in our younger years, and we curled together for several years. And on one particular occasion during the game, I'd asked Cliff to throw a takeout shot. Well, the rock barely made it to the house. We had a few words about this, met at center ice, and dropped the gloves. As we fought at center ice, our father, who was in the club witnessing this major bout, was confronted by other club members, barking their disappointment that two fine athletes, and especially brothers, were exchanging blows during a gentleman's game. After taking this verbal abuse from the club members about the conduct of his sons, our father calmly said in rebuttal, "Fellows, I'm not raising athletes, nor am I raising gentlemen. I'm raising two sons, and this is what brothers do. Now move aside and let me watch the fight." When I left home, I had one girlfriend, and I got married. Cliff had many girlfriends, and married many of them. And unfortunately, not all at the same time. But I've never had so many sisters-in-law that I didn't know. After rounding third and slithering into home plate, Cliff finally realized that he was not going to make it in the major leagues. As a matter of fact, after a night out of the town, he had trouble making it anywhere. When he finally came to the conscious conclusion that he was not going to make it anywhere, but needed to make it somewhere, he came to see his big brother. At that time, our letter line was doing fine, and there was no need for another partner. But after all, he's my brother. So in '78, I employed Cliff, and we've had a great partnership ever since. It's been a marriage made in heaven. I work in Sioux Lookout, and he plays golf in Thunder Bay.
Now, our next speaker. Now, Colin Bruce, surprisingly, was a little nervous about speaking tonight in front of this wonderful crowd. Now, it was surprising because Colin has done some public speaking before, but he asked me what he should do with his hands before his comedy routine. And I told him if he really wants to make the crowd happy, put them over his mouth. But Colin has done some emceeing of his own, and he appeals to two main groups. Insomniacs, because it helps them sleep, and cardiac patients, because they can't have any excitement. But since Colin became the editor of the Chronicle Journal, a lot of subscriptions have been sold to his paper. And I should know because I sold mine. Ladies and gentlemen, a funny guy and a great contributor to our community, Sir Colin Bruce.
Gee, it's great to be here. Can hardly believe it's only 10 to 10. Could you stand up for a second, Cheech? I don't know if anybody's noticed, but there are very few men in the world who could wear pink like this. And I gotta tell you, Cheech, you're not one of them. I don't think you're getting a dinner. You know, as I sat here listening to this good humor and corn about Cliff. Almost felt like I was in an Iowa cornfield. Just about everything you said, Cheech, came from something 25 years ago. Which is probably when you lost your hair. I don't know. You know, no, honest to God, this is the first time I've had the wife of an MC come up to me and apologize for her husband. You can't make this stuff up, it's true. But unlike Harvey, you know, I've known Cliff for 13, 14 years. Counted every day. And before we wanted to get into this, I wanted to take a moment and really reflect on the many successes and the many achievements that Cliff has really had during his lifetime. Can you help me out on this, Cliff? Oh, I'm sorry. That was kind of cruel. You know, sometimes when they have roast, they try to be so correct about it, and you know, you want to roast them, but you don't want to roast them, and you want to be kind of nice, and you don't want to hurt their feelings. Like Cliff came up to me just before the event tonight, and he says, "You just be careful about what you say, eh?" I'm thinking, what are you going to do? You have 5 airplanes. I talk to 35 subscribers every day, or 35,000 of them. I get to talk a lot faster than you do, Cliff. How many subscribers do you have these days, Harvey? 15? Sorry, he owns a newspaper in Sioux Lookout, and he's very proud of it. No, I checked with him earlier. He said he was in a good mood tonight. And I've never had a microphone yet where Harvey was in the room that I didn't take at least one shot at him. How are you doing tonight, Mum Friesen? You doing okay? You doing fine? Okay, it'll change. God, she's a beautiful woman. Are you sure she's your mum, Cliff? You know, I was thinking on the balance sheet, it's a lot easier to roast Cliff than it is to relish him. So we're going to talk about a couple of things. But you know what? If you think it's okay when a pilot says, "I'm pretty sure we'll be landing in Thunder Bay in the next couple of minutes," you're a Cliff Friesen fan. If you think casual labor is just an affectionate name for your closest group of friends, you're a Cliff Friesen fan. Last summer, you know, I was just sitting around, Grace and I were talking, just thinking we'd like to do something this weekend. Cliff and Susan phoned up and say, "Hey, would you like to come out to the camp?" I thought, Jesus, that's really good because we don't have a camp. But what a nice invitation. So I go out to the camp. The first thing I see is a pile of laminate flooring. Now, I may not be the sharpest pencil in the box.
That much is certain.
But when he says, "Where do you think you'd start with this, and did you bring a saw with you?" I knew right away that this is going to be a pretty busy weekend, and I was thinking it was just the kitchen. Well, we floored the whole goddamn camp. But it was okay. It was okay. A couple of weeks later, Cliff says, "Hey, you want to come back for a barbecue?" And I'm thinking, oh, Jesus, it's his way of saying thank you. And you might want to bring your chop saw and your tool belt with you. Because you see, he hadn't ordered the trim and the molding for all the baseboards for 4 friggin' rooms of his camp. So I go back and, you know, we work our hearts out and do all the trim and all the baseboards. He says, "But it's okay, Colin, you don't have to nail it up." You know, you can't make this stuff up. It's the truth. And Susan knows this story. I says, "Well, that's great, Cliff, because I'm thinking, he's going to roll up his sleeves and do some work. He says, no, geez, we were thinking about painting the camp next spring. And it'd be a shame for you to nail it all up, then take it all down, because we were kind of hoping you and Grace would come back and help us paint. And then he says, you don't have a camp, do you? I said, no, Cliff, I don't. He says, you ought to come by and use ours for a week. I thought, by the Jesus, what a great offer that is. Camp on Shabandawan for a week, boats, the whole thing. And then I got to thinking about it. A week. By the Christ, over the course of a week, what's he want me to do? Shingle the roof or dig a new basement? Honest to God, it's the truth. He's got this really cool neighbor. Now, I'm not saying that Cliff's averse to work. But he's got this great neighbor in the Wheatley family. Jesus, they are just the coolest couple. Don, he's worked hard, all his life. Jesus, he's worked his fingers to the bone, providing for his family and building a beautiful home on Shabandawan. Lives there year round. By Jesus, he's a trooper. I'm not sure just how old he is, but he's been ridden hard and put away wet. Well, somehow or another, Cliff's got him cutting the grass and chopping the wood for him. And if that doesn't tear it, he had Mary Wheatley over to his place, and she fell through the deck, damn near tore her leg off, falling through a rotten board. Cliff gets their son to come over and build the best goddamn sauna I've ever seen on the shore of Lake Shabandawan. You got to have friends like that. It just makes the world go around. I was listening to these folks talking about Cliff, and a lot of the A material got taken up because they were talking about his golf game, which is pretty much non-existent. But I've got to share one thing with you. He was playing golf in Myrtle Beach with Cliff Lundberg. Cliff Lundberg hits the ball a country mile. Cliff Friesen, who loved to, on a particular tee, Lundberg hits the ball like about 330 yards. He just kills it. And in typical style, Cliff shanks or bangs one off a tree, and he gets it out there 180 yards. But then he turns around and says, if it hadn't have been for that tree, that was a perfect shot. I'd have been right up there with him. The man has boundless optimism. When I first came to town and I started getting a couple of invitations to go play golf, I turned most of them down because I'm pretty busy at work. Jesus, they're leaving already. Somebody says, well, you can ride in the cart with Cliff Friesen. I thought, oh, that's pretty nice, because I knew Cliff's pretty heavy hitter around town, plays a good game of golf. Thought it was quite an honor, me riding around with the vice president of an airline. This is pretty cool stuff. Now, as I understand it, people actually will pay my green fees if I will ride in the cart with Cliff so they don't have to. As a matter of fact, I know a guy who'll walk the course for 4.5 hours instead of riding with Cliff. These are true stories. You can't make them up. If you're okay with an airline that boasts that while it loses luggage, it hardly ever misplaces passengers, you're a Cliff Friesen fan. Planes tend to land on three sets of wheels, or 3 wheels, one at the nose, one on each wing. If you don't mind it when the pilot says, geez, 2 out of 3 ain't bad, you're a Cliff Friesen fan. I have to ask, it was 60 years ago to the day that you had, Cliff. It was a special day. It was a lovely day. By the Jesus, a brand new baby boy. And you took a look at that, and 2 years later, Harvey came along. You just couldn't buy a break, could you? You know, Cliff Friesen is the only guy, I tell you about optimism. I went to the Grand Canyon with Cliff. Cliff and Susan said, you know, we ought to go to the Grand Canyon. And I'm probably the only tourist who ever went to the Grand Canyon in the middle of a goddamn snowstorm. And he still had the courage to say, isn't it beautiful? Typically, a roaster would apologize for everything they've said in the preceding 5 or 10 minutes. I'm not going to. As a matter of fact, I won't take any of it back because it was all true. I didn't embellish anything. What I said is what he is. Take him for what he is. I love him. He's been a great friend for a long time. Happy birthday, Cliff.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the wonderfully built and fabulously run Valhalla Inn. I feel a little outgunned here tonight. Colin Bruce has his whole editorial staff over there. Of course, Cliff has Harvey up here holding his hand. And Cheech, he's got the whole family down here. Anyhow, I understand. Where's Jim? Did he go? I understand Jim has now started his own union. To date, he has a membership of 1, but he doesn't care because he finally is getting his own way. And I thought Jim had a lot of nerve making fun of Brother Harvey. You know how he hates short jokes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to verify right here and now that he is not wearing his platform shoes tonight. I guess it's not kosher to make fun of Colin Bruce, as he's only been a Canadian citizen for a week now. Congratulations. Have a look at that disaster. The Liberals were smart enough to keep him out, but I guess since the Conservatives got in, he snuck by us here. What you don't know is that Colin is a competitive sailor, and his crew affectionately call him the Wombat or the Boat Goat. And that's a true story. He's the only guy that's managed to fall off the boat 4 times in the last 2 years. Steve Benoit was obviously hired because of his height. He's the only guy over at Bearskin that sees eye to eye with Harvey. And when it comes to Cliff, I'm sure glad his better half Susan is here tonight. How Cliff managed to catch such a fine lady, a Jones girl to boot, is beyond me. He must have met Susan over the internet. I can just see his profile now. Rich, tall, dark, handsome, great golfer, owns an airline. Sounds pretty good. What it should have read, mint 1946 male, high mileage, fair shape, some hair, well-used parts, not in running condition, but walks well. I asked some women who know Cliff to describe him in a few words, and they said, he thinks he's a ladies' man. He thinks he's a great dancer. Where's my pictures here? He thinks he's a legend in his own time. So I asked the girls at Bearskin, and they told me he may look like Santa Claus, but for sure he is not. What happened to that picture of Cliff, girls? I guess we lost it. Now, I'd like to give you a little insight into the way Cliff thinks. Back when Cliff was a little boy in Warman, Saskatchewan schoolhouse, the teacher said, apparently this is a true story, Harvey tells me it's true. The teacher asked him, Cliff, imagine there are 4 or 5 crows sitting on a fence, You pick up your BB gun and you shoot one, how many crows are left? And Cliff thinks for a minute, and he says, none. The teacher replies, none? How do you figure that, Cliff? And Cliff, he says, well, if I shoot one, all the other crows will fly away, scared. There'll be none left on the fence. And the teacher replies, well, that's not exactly what I was thinking, but I do like the way you think. So then Cliff says, teacher, can I ask you a question? And she says, sure. He says, there's 3 women sitting on a park bench eating an ice cream cone. One is licking her cone, another is biting it, and a third one is sucking it. How can you tell which one of the women is married? The teacher ponders the question uncomfortably and then finally replies, well, I guess the one sucking her cone. To which Cliff replies, actually, it's the one with the wedding ring. But I really like the way you think. The first time I flew bearskin, we were taxiing down the tarmac in a bearskin Metroliner, and it abruptly stopped, turned around, and returned back to the gate. After an hour of waiting, it finally took off, so I asked the flight attendant, what the hell was the problem? And she said, well, the pilot was bothered by a noise he heard in the engine. It took us a while to find a new pilot. Well, you know that's bullshit, because there's no flight attendants. And I must admit that Bearskin, as a regional airline, is one of the more advanced airlines. It was one of the first to hire female pilots. Now this really worried Cliff. He said to Harvey, he says, we can no longer call it the cockpit. Harvey said, don't worry, we'll call it the box office. Now let's face it, today there's a lot of people afraid to fly. So Bearskin has come up with that solution. They have replaced each aircraft restroom with a chapel. That's also bullshit, they don't have restrooms. Now, when roommate Don Kehoe moved out after 11 years, and Susan moved in, Harvey was suspicious that Susan was more than a roommate. One night, Cliff invited Harvey over for dinner, and while Susan was out in the kitchen, Cliff volunteered, I know what you must be thinking, but I assure you, Susan and I are just roommates. About a week later, Susan came to Cliff and said, ever since your brother came to dinner, I've been unable to find our Teflon skillet. You don't suppose Harvey took it, do you? Cliff says, well, I doubt it, but I'll write him just to be sure. He still hasn't figured out his BlackBerry, so he still writes to Sioux Lookout. So he wrote Harvey in Sioux Lookout and said, I'm not saying you did take the Teflon skillet from my house, and I'm not saying you did not take the skillet from my house, but the fact remains it's been missing ever since you were over for dinner. A few days later, Harvey wrote back, Cliff, I'm not saying that you do sleep with Susan, and I'm not saying that you do not sleep with Susan. But the fact remains, if Susan was sleeping in her own bed, she would have found the Teflon skillet by now. We all know that Cliff's been a major league curler for many years, so I spent some time researching his career, and I can see why he became a sponsor. It's the only way he gets to hold the bloody trophies. And his mixed curling career was even shorter. It came to a screeching halt when he said to one of the girls on the other team, that's a big end you got there. Now, Cliff asked me to tell one Finn story, if it's okay. It's getting a little late, but I'm sure most of you have heard it. But Cliff's so old, he won't remember, so it'll be all right anyhow. Cliff, it's about K.K. Rosberg, the race driver. Can you hear me okay, boy? Back in 1964, K.K. was coming to the United States to race in the Grand Prix in Detroit City, you know. And he was getting on the plane in Helsinki, Finnair, DC-5, lots of power, you know. And he's getting on the plane, he's holding the brown paper bag, and the stewardess, she says, Keiki, he's very famous in Finland, says, Keiki, what you got on that brown paper bag? He says, oh, he says, I got my sausages, he says. She says, oh, you can't bring them in United States. They got customs, you know. No meat in United States. He says, bullshit, I spent $7 on those sausages. They give me power, you know. She says, oh, otherwise then you're going to have to smuggle them. He says, okay. So he opened the belt and he put those sausages down the front of the pants, you know. So he got on that DC-5 and he sat in row 6B. That's that, you know, emergency aisle seat, a lot of leg room, you know. And that there was a blonde bombshell sitting beside there. Peggy Sukkari from Finland was sitting across the aisle there, you know. Anyhow, that DC-5 taking off, you know, and Keiki, he's pretty tired because he was in the sauna the night before with the Finn girls, you know. So he put the seat back and went to sleep. About 7,000 feet, there's turbulence up there, you know, and unbeknownst to Keiki, his fly was open, you know. One of those sausages coming out. You know that girl across the aisle, she was looking on that one really close, you know. So Keiki woke up, he says, what the hell everybody looking on me? And he looked down, he says, oh, he says, that sausage pretty soft, hard to get back in. So he reached in the pocket, pulled out his pocket knife, cut that one off. You know that girl? She fainted. Yeah. Anyhow, DC-5 keep climbing, going, nice job. 17,000 feet, more damn turbulence, another sausage come out. Keiki wake up again and he cut that one off too. Then he fainted. Thank you for allowing me to be part of this evening in support of Easter Seals. I think it's a great, great cause when you see these kids. And the other guys weren't very nice to Cliff, but all I can say is Thunder Bay has a lot of characters, and Cliff is certainly one of them. And Thunder Bay has some outstanding citizens, and I'd put him at the top of the list. Happy birthday, Cliff.
Thank you very much. Before we proceed, I'm going to deviate from the norm here, which has been one of the things that I've done in life. And it was suggested to me that I didn't have a woman come up here and roast me tonight. So what I've done is I have requested a very good friend of mine, 20-some years, to come up and say a few words before I carry on. And it is Georgie Harry. Georgie?
Well, I want to say it's just wonderful to come on at what time is it? 20 after 10, after all these so-called funny guys. Yeah, right. Anyway, Cliff, I can understand now why you wanted me to come up here, though, because you got a lot of classless ones at this table, okay? I can understand why it was important to have a woman come up here and to say a few words. Or you could say that Cliff is a bit of a control freak, someone who likes to have the last word, a bit of a rebel, that he's going to do it my way, right? There's no doubt in our mind he's going to do it his way. So the other thing I thought was he probably wanted a good-looking female to come up here and talk to, you know, and like I am female, okay, maybe the good-looking isn't there, but I am female. When Cliff asked me to talk this evening, I immediately said I would, because did you ever meet a fundraiser that wouldn't get up and talk? Even though this isn't for us, I realize, Cliff, right? It's going to Easter Seals, and it's a good cause, okay, and I'm glad it is. But there is the Thunder Bay Regional Health Sciences Foundation. Cliff, I thought I'd just remind you about that, okay? Anyway, I deviate. So I said, Cliff, I'd be glad to. I've got a lot of good things I could say about you. And he said, it's a roast. You can't say anything good. I said, well, that's going to be hard because you're a really nice guy, Cliff. I really like you. However, I knew I'd be up to the challenge and that I started to gather some material and talk to some of my fellow women friends. Now, I want you to know, Cliff, this isn't all my information, and it's not all relative to my experiences with Cliff. And Susan, where are you? I really want you to know that, okay? They're not my experiences. But most of my women colleagues and friends, the first thing they said about, did you ever notice when you're around Cliff, he's always got that silly grin on his face. Like he's always smiling when he's in the company of women. And what do you suppose he's thinking about? I decided I wouldn't go any further on that one this evening. So then I went to one of my friends in the nonprofit world, a well-respected charity that Cliff, you spent a lot of years with, okay? And they started to tell me about some things that happens when he's away at conferences. And I said, well, what do you mean? Well, they said he likes to go to jiggly bars. Jiggly bars. I don't think I'd go there either, because I don't think we want to hear about Cliff's experiences at the jiggly bars. And apparently there's times when he requires a lot of rest at these conferences. Well, I said, that's understandable, you know, strenuous agendas and all that at the conference, but apparently that wasn't the reason, and I decided that I couldn't discuss that tonight either. So I'm getting a little desperate now because there's a lot of things I can't discuss. But then I heard one that I knew I could share with you. Cliff has a line that he uses with the opposite sex when he's requesting their company. Now, you know, most guys have a line, right? And they use that when they want to take advantage of, when they want the pleasure of your company for an evening. But really, Cliff, come over for some soup? That's a little bit much, okay? I don't even think it's all that, I guess it's original. Most guys either ask in for a drink or, you know, look at their etchings or whatever, but not Cliff, come over for some soup. Now, Cliff often speaks on behalf of the charities that he volunteers with. And for those of you in that world that haven't had that experience, you're not going to want to, okay? Because it doesn't matter what kind of a script you give Cliff, he never follows it, okay? And it's anybody's guess what he might say. Now, I wouldn't know that, Cliff, because personally, over the 20-some years that I've known you, I've tried many times to entice you to sit on my board, okay? Or various boards. And he's always had the greatest excuses, like, I'm busy, I'm out of town, that's my church evening, Cliff. Even I didn't buy that one. And honestly, a girl can only take so much rejection, Cliff, okay? However, I've gotten over the rejection because now I realize that you were probably keeping me away from you so that I could come up and talk at this roast, okay, and hopefully say some nice things about you. Well, I haven't been able to do that yet either, but I know I'm moving in that direction. I think Cliff figured I wouldn't be able to tell you anything about his bad habits, or should I say his less than stellar qualities. Well, was he wrong? Because I have friends in low places. And speaking of those low places, I think that's where Cliff picked up those swanky cowboy boots he often wears, okay? Though I must say, Susan, thank God, since you've been around, we haven't seen those wandering cowboy boots quite as often, okay? You've accomplished the impossible. You've stopped those boots from walking. And really, thank God you came along, because that arrangement with Kehoe, that was truly the definition of the odd couple, right? And of course, Kehoe had to take some of my thunder away and talk about Cliff's favorite movie. Thanks a lot, Don. Like, you weren't even asked to come up, okay? I was. But we all know at heart Cliff's a simple guy, okay? He's a cowboy at heart. He loves the simple life. He loves horses. I heard that referenced several times. In fact, he really loves Westerns. And what Don forgot to tell you was that he had a front row seat at Brokeback Mountain, okay? And he still to this day claims that movie was about a cowboy and his horse. Cliff, the roast has been fun. However, much like you, I like to do my own thing and have the last word. So you may have told me that I could roast you, but I'm going to toast you as well. My friend, I've known you for many years, both as your customer during the time I was at Bell, and then as a recipient of your many generous donations and gifts to the Thunder Bay Regional Health Sciences Foundation. And personally, I think you're one of the best. You're a highly respected leader in our community and region. You've been a most successful business person, even though your brother isn't your biggest fan, but I know you are. I really know you're the one behind Bearskin Airlines, no matter what they say. And your many business endeavors have contributed greatly to the economic well-being of Northwestern Ontario. Your employees like and respect you, and your family and friends love you. You truly care about people and are always willing to lend a helping hand. Your generosity to the nonprofit community is legendary in our community and region. Your legacy will live on in this community and region for many, many years to come. Happy birthday, Cliff. I'm so proud to be among your friends.
I just want to thank Edward Mayer because this is my third new outfit this week because this is the third time I've been at the Valhalla. And I just wonder why we can't have these events at my hotel. There's something wrong here, but thanks, Edward. I got 3 new dresses this week. Yes, and Cliff bought them all. You know, you have to really appreciate my husband. I have to tell one short little story before I read this. My husband was on a golf trip with Cliff and Dawn and the boys, and Cliff was in the golf cart with my husband, and they were in front of this pond that was in front of the green. So Barry took his shot, and Cliff dropped him off so he could hit his shot, and he drove around and headed to the green, and he left Barry on the other side of the pond. So as Barry went to the other side of the pond walking, he got to Cliff and said, "Cliff, I just want you to get one thing straight. It's my wife that walks on water, not me." Anyway, I this afternoon thought, and I'm so glad Georgia Harry ended up coming up because I was thinking, boy, if we're just stuck with these guys at this table having something to say, we're in big trouble. So thanks, Cliff, for inviting up Georgia. But you know what? I'd come up anyway, whether I was invited or not. Anyway, it goes like this. Happy birthday, Cliff. To celebrate Cliff's birthday that marks 60 years, gathered our family, colleagues, and many of your peers. To share in stories and tales of days gone past, you know this party will certainly be a blast. Accomplishments in his life's journey have been many. He's even managed to have made the odd penny. Having said that, he's certainly not greedy. He gives much to our society, sick and the needy. Definitely an example of a true leader of the way. No challenge too large, come what may. The nice guy picture that I have started to paint has another dimension. He's not really a saint. Not that I'm looking to tarnish his good name, but I've heard during his life there's been a few dames. Not one of them able to tame that boy, no one would do, until one caught his eye, captured his heart, and that woman is Sue. He loves to travel and even attend school, golf that is, 3 or 4 times a year as a rule. I'm quite sure this helps him to master the game, unless you ask Don. Oh, I wasn't supposed to mention his name. He's been known to enjoy a few vodka and glasses of red wine, which gets him in trouble. Of course, only the very odd time. With so many companies, he's certainly quite the boss. And if I'm smart, this is the part where words would be of a loss. So everyone charge your glasses, and let's give a toast.
Cheers, Cliff.
To Cliff for lending your name in honor of this charitable roast, wishing you happy 60th birthday, good health, and continued success. And of course, the most important thing of all, years of happiness.
Well, first thing Jim said when he saw my piece of paper, he said, "Is that all you're going to say?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I certainly don't want to keep you people too long." But what I do want to say is I really want to thank everybody for being here tonight and coming out and celebrating with me, I guess, my birthday, and also I guess what we're really here for is raising some funds for Easter Seals, which is very important. So I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I want to thank the out-of-town guests that have traveled a long ways, and Montreal, Winnipeg, Toronto, Ottawa, and it's greatly appreciated, and I guess I've said to people many times I was very, very surprised that people were coming that distance, that length to be here. And of course my family, and I guess that's a real surprise, so I didn't even really know don't even really know what to say other than that that it's just great to have everybody here. Just great to have my mother here. Yeah, thank you very much. It's great to have you here. To have everybody else here, my sisters, brother-in-laws, my sister-in-law Anna. I only have one sister-in-law. She's the best. My nephews and my nieces. And of course, I'm delighted to have my daughter Jody here tonight with her husband Marvin and their 3 children. And I want to say a special thank you, I know it's been mentioned before, but to Steve and to Don, Tom, and everybody else that was out there selling tickets. And I know that we had a lot of competition for this event tonight, but I can assure you they worked extremely hard, and sometimes it's how hard you work that's more important than having the numbers. So thank you to all of you, and I don't know who else, but certainly Steve and Don and Tom, and of course the Easter Seals, Jody. Then of course there's Susan, and I want to give a little bit of history here. As, as all of you know, I've been married twice. My second wife and I had no children. However, all 3 of my children have different mothers. My daughter reminded me one day, and she said, "You know, Dad, we also all have different fathers." My first wife and I, we adopted 2 of our daughters, and then had a son of our own. So that's the story to it. Most times when I tell that story, people say, "I don't want to hear no more. That's it." So it's great, and so I did have 22 years of marriage, and I have to say that they were long years. Took 2 of them. And then, of course, you know, I was living by myself, and along came Don Keogh. He was only going to be there. He was only going to be there for 3 months. 11 years later, boy, how does time fly when you're having fun. And that's when Don one day after 11 years came and told me he wanted to move in with his woman. Of course, I was quite pleased, and I was very happy for Don. And then I thought about it for a moment, and I thought, you know what? He left me for a woman. However, if he'd have left me for a man, I'd have been in real trouble. And then, of course, I met Susan. And yeah, Don has an appreciation for that one. He's very thankful. And I'd met Susan 10 years before we actually even had our first date, and herself and a good friend of mine, May Catt, and Lauren Saxberg, and that was when I was on the Board of Governors for the college, and it was a chair, so we go off to Toronto because 3 of these people are going to receive Premier's Award. And of course, Bob Ray was Premier at that time. And Bill Davis was there as well. And here I was watching these 3 people. I'd known May before, but I hadn't met Susan or Lauren Saxberg before. And of course, they get these Premier's Award. And after the luncheon was over, you know, I meandered off, did my business in Toronto, and I go and get on the airplane, and I end up sitting beside Susan. So we had a long chat, and she had taken in a young youth and more or less adopted her. And I heard the whole story, and then at that time Air Canada was doing draws for tickets, and lo and behold, who won but me? And I thought, well, you know what, I can fly in Air Canada anytime I want. It's not going to cost me anything. So I said, you know, I'm going to give this young lady here the ticket, and so on. And so I did that, and after that day, you know, I'd run into her, see her every once in a while, and I'd date her friends and this kind of thing. Yes, that's right. And so anyway, Susan, I asked her out on a first date when I met her at the keg one night, and I asked her if she would go to the hockey game with me, and she said, well, you know, you've got a girlfriend. No, I'm not, you know. I said, no, I said, I'm alone now, and fine, and says, you know, if you want to go to the hockey game, I'd just love to have you as my date. So she said, okay. So, no soup that night. And so then after the hockey game was over, this was one of the first games of the, when the Thunderwolves hockey team started, and it was the first game I think they were playing, wasn't it? So anyway, I'm taking her home, and I said to her, I said, how did you enjoy that? And she said, oh, it was okay. And I said, well, you know, there is another game, if you would like to go. I said, you know, certainly I would like to have you as my guest. And she looked at me and she said, well, you know what, really don't have anything better to do, so I suppose, yeah, that would be fine. True story. However, now it's been 5 years, and as you know, I have some longevity there. I've had, my first marriage was 12, my second was 10, Susan now have been 5, so if I calculate that right, she's got 5 or 6 years. And so one of my goals now is to double my assets, because if I'm going to give away half, at least I haven't lost anything. That's just a joke, Susan. So anyway, after we'd been together for about 6 months, and summer was coming, and I said to Susan, I said, you know, I just want you to know that, I said, in the summertime, I said, I do an awful lot of golfing. And she said to me, she says, well, you know, that's fine with me, as long as you don't expect me to be there with you. Now that's love. You know, when I say to her, you know, dear, I'd like to go to the gym tonight, she said, go ahead. When I want to go down to the dome and hit balls, golf balls, she says, go ahead. When I want to go to Myrtle Beach golfing, she says, go ahead. That, ladies and gentlemen, is love. And I'd thought about this for a while, so I asked Susan one day, I said, so what does love mean to you? She thought about that for a while. She says, you washing the clothes, doing the laundry, and ironing my clothes. I said, anything else? She says, yeah, you making the bed in the morning. Anything else? Yes. You making breakfast for me every morning. That, ladies and gentlemen, is love. Steve, it's getting cold, and you know, we have this saying out on the prairies, when you're walking down the road tomorrow morning, those horse turds are going to be pretty hard. You may be stubbing a few toes. Cheech, I'm not going to say too much about you, because really I don't want any more tickets. Harv? I'm not going to say much. I want to have a job tomorrow too. But I do want to thank you for inviting me to be part of Bearskin. That's been great. Colin, and I know that Steve talked a lot about golf and so on and so forth, and I'm just finished my 10th season where everybody that I play against and play with have been playing golf for 40, 50 years. And anytime I get close to their score or I beat them, and when Don and I went to golf school, at that time he was shooting in the 80s and he never really has got that much better. When I went to golf school, I was shooting 140 and I'm now in the low 80s, the odd time the high 70s. And every time I do beat them or get close to beating them, all I ever hear is how bad they golf today. When I beat them, it's like, well, yeah, of course, you go to golf school every year. That's all, that's why that's the only reason you're any good. I say, yeah, you're right. And I said, Tiger Woods has his own trainer. I said, so why shouldn't I? Jim Jameson does a great job. Colin? I saw myself in the paper there a few times with the young children and so on and so forth. But you know what? We never did make the front page. And I also want you to know, Susan and I bought another camp. You don't need to come there for a week. You're going to need to be there for a full month now. Now, Tom, I used to be a truck driver, and I'm in the airline business. I graduated, but you're still there, and I do understand why, because years ago when I first met you. And, all you ever did was talk more about your trucks and than you did about anything else. It was always your trucks. And you know what? I always wonder, I hear all these other guys, they talk about their women and so on and so forth. And you talk about your trucks, and I understand why now, especially after hearing your joke. Trucks have bigger boxes, Tom. I understand now. Anyway, I guess I would like to talk about the real reason we're here tonight. And we heard Maggie Sophia come up and talk tonight, and heard Jim say a few things, and I'm going to repeat a few here. And I do want to tell you a little story. And I was at home 2 weeks ago just to spend some time with my mother. And as you know, the Easter Seal Society really got going in the 30s when polio was going across our country. And my mom had a youngest brother, who contracted polio and was crippled for life. And we spent a lot of time with our Uncle Henry. And when we'd go out, we used to, at that time on the prairies, we had wooden furnaces and so on, so we used to travel 10 miles with the tractor and the wagon to get wood, and Uncle Henry would take us boys with him. And I remember him sitting on the trailer, because he had a lot of strength on top, and we would pick up the one end of the log, and then we'd go pick up the other end, and we'd throw it on the wagon. And I watched my uncle. I got married, had children, and I saw him wanting to be or have the potential that he really wanted to be. He really wanted to have his independence, and even the local welding shop would weld up onto the gear the gear shift would be wired to the handle and to the steering wheel column, so that because he couldn't use his legs, he would use his hands. So we watched him, and I certainly today, and when I talk to my mother, recognize the independence that he wanted. He wanted to be able to do his own work. He wanted to be able to raise his own money. He didn't want to rely on somebody else's assistance to do it. I'm going to talk a little about my sister who's here tonight. When she was 15 years old, she was born with a heart defect and was considered a blue baby. So she was blue all her life, and she couldn't walk the length of this room. And I know how hard my mother worked. And we went and made sure, my mother made sure she wanted her to go to school because she wanted her to achieve the most potential that she could. And in the wintertime, until she was in grade 6, I took her to school on the sleigh, and in the summertime, on my balloon-tired bike that my parents had bought. And I saw my sister, and she desperately wanted to go to school. She didn't want to stay at home. And even I know my mom said at times she didn't really want her to go to school because she was struggling so much.